Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to episode of 123 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I'm Gary, along with my co-host, not partner in crime this week, Byron. How are you, Byron?
Doing good. We finally got to the point where we didn't need to commit acts of criminal activity to keep this podcast going, so I'm doing great, Gary.
Yeah, well, I don't think we got to the point. We just saw the movie Deadpool, and we're afraid that he's going to come and get us, so we decided to, go straight and narrow.
Okay, I think I need to. I have not seen it yet. I've heard things about it.
So you're going to have to see it, Byron.
It's on your recommend list?
Actually, I haven't seen it either. But I saw it came out. So
I've been seeing Facebook memes and such, so I definitely have heard about it, but I'm not the biggest movie follower. But here we go.
Well, why follow movies when you can listen to the BJJ Brick Podcast? And I'll tell you, this week we got a great episode. We've got Valerie Worthington. I know we've done a lot of her, we've went over a couple of her articles that she writes for BreakingMuscle.com. She's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's going to be our special guest this week. So stay tuned and be prepared to have fun and learn a lot of stuff.
Smooth transition there, Gary.
Hey, I'm getting better.
And another thing we have going on this week, we have our normal every show we do a quote, an article. Last show we mentioned picking one of our reviews that we got on iTunes and highlighting that for the review of the year. At the end of the show, we're going to share that with you guys. We've got the review of 2015, the best review that we have that we kind of picked from many, many great reviews.
Yeah, but the only bad part about the review is it kind of bashes me, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a very nice review, and I do appreciate it in its many elements.
Yeah, I do too. It's a good review. So it's our very first review of the year. So we're going to have one happy listener who submitted it. So definitely get your submissions in so you can get it for 2016.
Yep, armbar submissions, choke submissions. Was that talking about, Gary?
I kind of like the double monkey kung fu punch submission.
We'll have to get to that in a little bit there, Gary. I like where you're going with that. But before we get into the double monkey kung fu punch, which will be on the podcast, we're going to talk about that this week. I got to mention really quick about our audiobook that we have for sale. All you new grapplers and people who are considering jiu-jitsu as something that you might want to pick up, I've put together an audiobook. It's about 2.5 hours long. It's this guy talking into a microphone, coaching you through your first year of grappling. Everything from finding your school to what to do your first day and your first month while you're training, goals you should set, techniques to focus on so you're not wasting time on stuff that doesn't work. And just kind of like you get a little advice from me, and it's $11.99, and it will, I hope, get you through your first year of grappling and keeping you going well into the second.
Yep, definitely check it out. It's getting great reviews and it's helped a lot of people. Also, check out and get on our email list. That way you'll never miss an episode of the BJJ Brick Podcast. Every Tuesday you'll get an email from us with a link to the show. So if you get on that, and as Byron always says, we don't spam you. We really, that's all you're going to get from us. We're the gift that doesn't give too often. Only once a week.
We're too lazy or busy with other things to send out extra emails. And also, Gary, like an auto reply thing, that costs money per week. And we're spending our money that we get on the podcast to make it the best we possibly can.
But so definitely check it out. Get on our email list, and you'll never miss anything. And like I said, we don't spam you, and we don't sell our list. So you have nothing to worry about.
Gary, we've got a quote this week that is interesting for people who are experiencing a win and also experiencing a loss.
Well, that's all of us.
That's everybody, I guess, unless you're in that plane where you just don't do any experiencing at all.
Yeah, so, I guess that could happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this one, it's from John F. Kennedy, who I believe was in politics and a president, actually, here in the United States for a while.
Yep. I've heard of the guy.
Yep. His quote, "Victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is an orphan." And I read this, and I'm trying to digest it and figure out what it means. And I don't know exactly when in his presidency he said this, but I know he had some tough times in his presidency. But to me, I could think of like MMA or jiu-jitsu match that happens. And when somebody wins, everybody knows that person. They're high-fiving you and hey, I know that guy. I trained with that person. And like, Victor has 1,000 followers. Everybody loves the champion. Everybody wants to, kind of attach themselves and experience that win in some way that they can. And then defeat is an orphan. You see the same person, maybe next month go out there and lose. Well, they end up walking back to the locker room or wherever, and it's kind of a lonely experience. And, that's part of the highs and the lows of competing sometimes. But a lot of times that it seems like it is actually happening. I'm sure, I know Gary and I, when a teammate of ours happens to come up short with something, we try to cheer him up a little bit. But it's harder to talk to somebody who's just suffered a defeat. You try, hey, hang in there, better luck next time, and that sort of thing. Gary, what do you think about this quote?
Yeah, I agree with you. You always, even the guy who loses, you're trying to, pump him up and, make him feel better about himself. But it's hard because that person's really down. But, I sometimes think about, let's say I'm watching the UFC and I just see a match that's incredible. It's, an even match going both ways, or it still could be an uneven match, but the guy who's getting beat just shows incredible, grit, and doesn't quit, just keeps coming. And I tell you, after that, I've seen some people who just put up great displays, even on the losing end, where everybody's saying, hey, I know that guy. I think he's the greatest. And man, what a performance, even though he lost. So, I think it can, but not as often, not very little amount of time will it happen in the defeat. But I do think that sometimes the defeat has 1,000 fathers too, if it's a really entertaining fight or match.
Yeah, you've got to. I agree. Like a close fight or somebody who shows a lot of heart, that definitely gains them fans. But a lot of times that that the day after the fight, you just picture it, Gary. The day after a fight, look at somebody's Facebook feed. If they won, they've got tons of people coming in and congratulating them. If they lose, they get a few people saying, keep your head up and I thought you did well, or those sort of things to try to encourage. But it's a lot less encouragement from that side of things with the defeat. So
true. Yep.
Just as yourself as a teammate, remember that you got a teammate that just suffered a tough loss. Maybe they were at Worlds and they came up shorter than they had thought they were going to get. Maybe they thought they were going to medal and they got close and didn't quite make it, or maybe they're going for gold and they got silver. And just that support after they lose is also an important thing, not just wanting to tag along with their success and that sort of thing.
Byron, I think we'll go straight to our article of the week. How's that sound? That sounds good.
I'm going to click over to that right now.
Okay. Hey, this week we got a great one from a previous guest, and I know we've talked about his articles before there. Stephen Kesty. We have an article from him, Don't Build Your BJJ Game on White Belt Techniques. Great advice, and we'll put a link on the show notes to this article. But, what Stephen's talking about is, he says certain techniques are white belt moves. And what he means by that is he says they work well against white belts, sometimes blue belts, but as you move up in levels, they stop working. And once you're new, you can pull off almost anything against that guy, but pretty soon that person's fell into that move many times, learns better defense, learns how to move, learns where to put his hands, learns to tuck his chin, and those moves start working. And what I thought was pretty cool is, I know we talked earlier about the double monkey punch, but which is now my new favorite move. But he talks about, in the 80s, he was doing classical kung fu, and he was jumping around, practicing tiger claws, leopard paws, monkey fist, crane breaks, and, just, over and over again. And, one technique that he said was, really a giant steaming pile of horse doo-doo was the monkey double, or the double monkey punch. And this is where you simultaneously punch your opponent high and low at the same time. And, the wisdom behind it was, since blocking one punch was hard, how about blocking 2 punches? It makes it twice as hard. But in all reality, by contorting your body and twisting your body and trying to do that monkey punch, it's a very ineffective move. You're going to have not much behind it. And you can see the picture and you just start laughing when you see Stefan practicing the double monkey punch.
Absolutely. You got to go to the website, grapplearts.com, and look for the article. What was it called again? Don't build your BJJ game on white belt techniques. We'll put a link to it in the show notes if that's easier for you, so it's in your email box. But you got to see that picture of him doing the double punch. It looks very nice. I mean,
yeah, it'll make you laugh right there.
It's like super amount of attack coming at you.
Yeah. And then he goes on. He asks the question: what are solid techniques that are seriously threat to any opponent, no matter how skilled he is?
Gary, you're forgetting one of the main things in this article. Who would this double punch be good on? He said who it would be good on.
Oh yeah, it would be good on a kid because he outweighs him by his 12. It'd be good on his unsuspecting 12-year-old son while he was drinking a glass of milk by the fridge, and he would blindside him. But he said it would probably only hurt or maybe even knock him over because he outweighs him by 100 pounds.
So there we go. That's I didn't want you to forget that part. Stefan a lot of times with some humor in his article, and I appreciate that, Stefan. So, sorry, Gary, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to make sure I brought that part up. I was just laughing when I was reading the article and looking at the picture.
And he's actually has a list on here, another link to a different website where it talks about the top submissions at different levels. And there's tons of information if you go to the website that Stefan will link to about different stats on what submissions are actually working at the elite levels. But it seems like it's more of your basic techniques, right, Kerry?
Yeah, mostly basic techniques, and as we always say, basics wins matches. So focus on your basic stuff.
He gives an example of a technique that really doesn't work at the high levels, the Americana.
And like he says, Americana will work great against when you're outweighing, in the white and blue belts. But as you start going up in levels, you just don't see it happen very often.
Yeah, I don't know, just because people don't put their arms in that spot, or they're working on something else, or I don't know. It's true that Gary, as you and me have gotten better, certain techniques, I when they're trying to be applied to me, I just don't respect them as much as I once did. Although I've been caught in them, and I know that I could certainly get caught in Americana again, but it's not the same alarm bell that goes off in my head when someone's on my back and they're working on my neck, or I'm in a triangle. It's a different level of a threat to me, it feels. So.
Yeah, and before I started reading this article, that was the first thing I thought about was Americana, and I've started trying to bring the Americana back myself. I think my Kimura game is very good, and I've been working because I think Kimuras and Americanas kind of almost go together. I think the Americana is a lot harder to finish, but I have been having some luck against even some higher level people lately, and actually used it today, which. I don't catch a lot of these, so I use it today against a very good person, and I don't catch a lot of them. So when I do, it's kind of something that sticks out in my head. But it's kind of funny because, I know he says you may not necessarily want to work on this game, and we'll get on that here in a minute. But I have been working on my Americana to try to see if I can get it better and start hitting a little more of them.
Yeah, he doesn't flat out say don't do these techniques like, the Americana was a great example, or the double punch.
Yeah.
But he helps you.
Definitely don't do the double punch.
He helps you kind of decide how much time to allocate towards that versus the moves that are typically winning matches.
Yeah, yep. And what I like, he says, try split your training 80-20. Spend 80% of your time training the high percentage techniques that are working right now at the high levels. And this will ensure that you're building a solid, effective game that'll serve you when all your chips are down. Spend 20% of your time and effort on stuff from outer space, techniques you might not think will be the next big thing, cool moves you saw on YouTube. And, who knows, those may become your moves down the road, but it also keeps it fun. Keeps you, trying some stuff that somebody may look at, like, why are you trying flying triangles? You're not going to hit that, but hey, it's fun. We need to have fun. So I like that, the 80-20 split.
There we go. And it makes sense. I mean, you do need to know these things and see how they work. but to spend a lot of your time on something that's likely to not really work for you, it's not the best investment of your time. And I've, looking back on my jiu-jitsu, I've spent, I'll typically adopt something for like almost a year and develop that. And I've spent a lot of time on things that I don't do at all anymore. And that's okay. I could teach it and have knowledge of it and help escape it. But it's just part of the process. You take some things and you keep them, and you take some things, you let them go.
Yep. But I do know that Byron was talking to me that he is going to add the double monkey punch into his game.
Hey, one more reason to go to the Grapple Arts website here is that I just put a comment up on their website. So if you want to check that out and engage in the conversation, swing on by there and leave a comment on the grapplearts.com website.
Awesome.
So there you'll see a comment by BJJ Brick, our
awesome.
Facebook page anyway, Gary.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we got one of those. So, Gary, before we roll the article, I want to just let everybody know a couple things. At the beginning of the interview, maybe like the first 2 minutes or so, there's quite a bit of background noise, just some jostling around of some things. And after 2 minutes, that goes away, and we get down to business. So Valerie's got a lot of great information to give to the audience here, and I'm excited that she's doing that for us. So let's go ahead and roll the interview, Gary.
Let's do it.
Diary of the World's Most Interesting Grappler. This is a reading from my diary. As I made my way to the North Pole, my goal was to find a place up there to train. For this is one of the few places on my map that I have never trained. Dear Diary, as I finish this 27th day in the North Pole, I am forced to face a brutal reality. I have depleted my supply of acai. The only place I might find more is at a BJJ school. This makes my search even more desperate. Tomorrow, I will milk the dogs. I was told you can get milk from anything that has nipple. I should have brought a cup.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy and excited to bring Valerie Worthington to the BJJ Brick podcast. Valerie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on here. Every week on the podcast we do we talk about an article, and you've been kind of on the podcast a couple times. We've talked about a couple of your articles for sure, and we've really enjoyed learning from you that way, and really excited to have you here on the show and learn from you in an interview format. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I hope I'm as articulate speaking as I try to be when I'm writing.
All right, I'm looking forward to this. Could you kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience get to know you a little bit here?
Sure. Let's see. I am originally born and raised in New Jersey. I discovered jiu-jitsu when I was in graduate school in Michigan. I had become sort of sedentary and decided that I needed some sort of physical activity. So I ran a couple of marathons first and then decided that I was done with marathons, but had really enjoyed the opportunity to push myself physically, which also turned out to be a mental and a psychological challenge as well. And so in the town that I was going to school in, there was a martial arts academy that had a variety of offerings, and one of them was Muay Thai. So I started out with Muay Thai, punching and kicking and elbowing and kneeing, and liked doing that, but didn't like it when people did it to me. So on the next mat over, there were people doing all these crazy kind of gyrations on the ground, and they were rolling around, and they were doing cartwheels and all kinds of crazy movements that I'd never seen before. And it turned out that was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I had to try that. And then I was kind of a goner, and Muay Thai receded into the background, and I ended up focusing mostly on Jiu-Jitsu, to the point where at about 6 years into my Jiu-Jitsu career, I quit my job in Chicago, and I sold the condo that I'd been living in Chicago, and I used some of the money to buy a car and decided to do a road trip around the country, and I made it to Canada, and that was in 2006. So I sort of used jiu-jitsu as a way to remove myself from a life that wasn't really working very well for me, and ended up really embracing more of what jiu-jitsu had to offer in terms of structuring my life. And I ended up in California, and I did some competing, which I never thought I would do, and eventually started writing more professionally about jiu-jitsu. I had maintained a blog while I was on my travels, and through Breaking Muscle and a couple of other publications. And I'm working on a book right now, and so through that I started to really kind of think about jiu-jitsu from that angle. And I now live in New Jersey. I train at Princeton BJJ, and I train and teach and write and make a living and do all those things that grapplers need to do.
All right. Hey, Valerie, I'm getting some microphone noises a little bit, like maybe something's touching the microphone there, or...
I wonder if it's just me moving around. So are you hearing it now?
No, it doesn't. I don't hear it at all right now.
Okay, so what I need to do is just stay perfectly still.
Hey, I could call your phone if that would be easier, because I don't want to glue you down and keep you from...
It's no problem. It'll be fine. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It wasn't... every now and then I would hear some just kind of that sound of something kind of... And anyway, okay.
A swoosh.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. But you mentioned that you're working on a book. Tell me a little bit about the book you're working on.
The book is a memoir of the travels that I took that I had just mentioned when I left Chicago and started driving around the country. And so it's a travelogue. It originates in Chicago. It goes into the reasons that I decided to leave, and then kind of takes the reader on some of the adventures that I had, and lands us in California, which is where I spent 5 years training, doing most of my competing, and going on to earn my brown and black belts. And the book is being published by Artichoke Media, and I've been working with Marshall Carper, who has been an amazing editor and handholder and expert in multimedia publication. So I'm getting kind of a crash course in those things. And the goal is for the book to be circulated late February. So that's what we're shooting for after me having worked on it for over a year with Marshall. And so it's almost go time for this book. So I'm excited and nervous.
Oh, that's great. And we're doing this interview today is January 20th, and we're planning on putting this interview out on February 22nd. So that'll be hopefully good timing for you. Who would be like when you picture somebody sitting down and reading this book? What type of a person would that be? Like, who's your target?
It's a good question. I certainly hope that people who train jiu-jitsu would be interested in the story. But one of the things that I have found, both in writing the blog that I maintained when I was on my trip, and also through writing for Breaking Muscle, is that people who don't train will frequently contact me and say, hey, I'm not a jiu-jitsu person, but what you had to say in your last story or in your last blog post really resonated with me. And so I'm hoping that there would be wider appeal beyond people who train, people who may be looking for an adventure story, or who may be asking questions of themselves about what they want to be doing with their lives to make them meaningful, anybody who's ever had doubts along those lines. And so I'm hoping that it will strike a chord with a variety of different audiences, but I guess we'll see.
It sounds like a fascinating book, and I'm looking forward to it. You obviously write a lot, and we could check that out online or in this book in a little while here. And you train a lot, it sounds like. Tell me something about you that would surprise me.
What would surprise you about me? Well, given that I do travel a lot, and I've traveled a lot to compete, I've traveled a lot to train. I would be considered, I think, amongst some to be pretty itinerant. The fact of the matter is that I'm actually kind of a homebody. I like to have, my things around me. I like to have a routine. I I like to watch TV. I like to be around people I care about. So I think that is one thing that might be inconsistent with maybe the more public persona that I project, where events that I participate in require me to travel a lot, and my history with jiu-jitsu has been one that's been more sort of on the go and light enough to travel. But you know, if left to my own devices, then I'm just as happy to sit at home with people I care about and read the paper or watch a movie or drink a cup of coffee. Cool.
It sounds like you are the type of person who's happy kind of no matter where you are. You just have that attitude and that personality. That's great.
I like to think so. I like to think that I do what a friend of mine described as blooming where you're planted. So there are times when I'm in a situation where I don't have to actively work at being happy, but then there are other times, and I think all of us have those situations where you have to look on the bright side or find the positive. But for the most part, I'm pretty fortunate in that, particularly after this jiu-jitsu journey that I took, I've been able to structure a life for myself that's pretty satisfying. So I'm a very fortunate person.
Wow. I like that. Bloom where you're planted, whether it be an actual location or a situation you find yourself in. You might have to work at it, but I like that. I never heard that before. You mentioned that you've done a couple marathons. I did one maybe 8 or 9 years ago. A very difficult task. If someone's listened to this, we have a lot of listeners who are quite ambitious and maybe want to try this. What advice would you have to somebody who is considering training for a marathon?
I would suggest starting small and keeping your eye on the prize, but not focusing on it too much. And what I mean by that is, when I first contemplated running a marathon, the thought of even running double-digit miles, the thought of even running 10 miles was completely foreign to me. So I had to start with running 2 miles, and then I ran 4 miles. And so I slowly built up and eventually got to the point where not only was I physically able to handle the running, but I was also psychologically able to view myself as the kind of person who runs 10 miles. And for me, that was almost more difficult to overcome those psychological and mental barriers. So the main suggestion that I would have is to believe that you can do it, but focus on the intermediate goals and really develop a comfort with those, and know that those will take you where you need to go.
That is great advice for a marathon. And I know you could do this, but can you relate that to jiu-jitsu?
Sure. When I first started training jiu-jitsu, when I was a white belt, I remember looking at people with blue belts and thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'll never get a blue belt." And I thought blue belt because there weren't even that many brown or black belts in the area where I was training. So the thought of a black belt was just so beyond the pale, something that I never could have contemplated at that moment. And it's probably smart because I certainly was nowhere near equipped to even think that way. But one of the things that I tried to do and that I wish I had done more of is just really enjoy the journey, enjoy it as much as possible, the sheer frustration of not being able to move your body the way it needs to, or to know in your brain what you need to do and not to get your body to get there. And so again, don't focus on the next belt or the farthest belt. Just focus on being a little bit better today than you were yesterday, even if that means you made as many mistakes, but now you understand a little bit better why you made them.
Wow. Just like I had similar thoughts and things while I was trying to bump up my running and go a little bit further. And there were days when, I'd go out and I'd run 13 or 14 miles, on a weekend trying to get up there to where I felt like good about it. And then the next week I couldn't do that. My body was saying, no, you're not doing it this time. And so I'd be disappointed. And I think there's a lot of disappointment with people's results in jiu-jitsu sometimes. It's a process that takes time and that has some minor setbacks, like similar to running, and to try to enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the people that you're with, and the results will happen.
And bear with me with this analogy.
Yeah.
But when I was in graduate school, I took a statistics class, and basically everybody in the class was afraid of statistics, and I was nervous about it too. So for the first half of the semester, 7 or 8 weeks, I would sit and listen to the professor, and I'd think to myself, I know she's speaking English. I know that I know these words, but they just simply did not compute for me. And then it wasn't until maybe week 10 when she was speaking and I actually understood what she was talking about. And the reason I bring up this analogy is because what I think needed to happen is that I needed to take in a critical mass of information, and my brain needed to figure out a way to make sense of it, and that took time. So I was sitting here thinking, I'm not doing anything, I'm not learning anything, when actually the learning was sort of going on behind the scenes. It's just that I wasn't able to access it yet. And then all of a sudden, I certainly wasn't an expert statistician, but I had a context and I had a framework for understanding statistics, and then I could build from there, and my learning speed increased. And that has happened with me in jiu-jitsu numerous times, where to the point where now I know that if I'm drilling a move and I'm just not getting it, I'll try it, and then I'll put it away. And then I'll come back to it the next day, and chances are, once I've had a little time, whether it's some sort of mental, physical alchemy, or I just needed a break from it, I come back and I'm able to execute. So the times when we think we're not progressing or when we've hit a plateau, those may actually be the times when our brains and our bodies are working the hardest. It's just that we can't see the results quite yet.
I like the example. It's making me think that you're in the statistics class, it's hard, you're struggling, it sounds like it's a different language, and then it clicks, and then you start to pick up things, and you were learning all along, but you didn't realize it. In your statistics class, it was designed for maybe there were prerequisites or something like that, but it was designed, day one was supposed to be easier than day two, and kind of build on that and build on that. In jiu-jitsu, a lot of times, day one of your first class is not typically, welcome to jiu-jitsu, here's what we want to show you on day one. You're in a class with other students who have been training for years sometimes. And so that learning curve might be a little different for jiu-jitsu. Would you agree to that?
I absolutely do agree, and this is one of the things that I became interested in writing about when I started writing for Breaking Muscle, which is the health and fitness website I write for. The sort of the hidden curriculum. So there's the technique that you learn in jiu-jitsu, but there are also the social conventions. Where am I supposed to stand as a white belt? Is this an academy where you bow to the mat, where you bow to the instructor? How do I tie my belt? What are the warm-ups like? Am I allowed to ask people questions? All of these things are different in different academies, and they're not necessarily things that are explicitly taught. So for a newcomer, not only is that person trying to wrestle with, no pun intended, but some very difficult physical and sensory motor concepts, but they're also trying to navigate an interpersonal and a social situation. So it's no wonder that people would feel overwhelmed and stupid and clumsy and like they've never experienced anything like this before, because they really are being asked to do quite a bit, some of which is explicitly being taught to them and some of which they're being required to acquire tacitly. That
is a good point, that there's not early on in jiu-jitsu, you're not just learning about the techniques and things, you're learning a lot of social things, and people will often ask me, like, what do I do? My first day is on Tuesday, or it's coming up very soon. I'm going to try jiu-jitsu. What should I work on? What should I do? There's lots of advice about be clean and be polite and all these things. But I think some of the best advice I could think of is make a friend that first day. That'll make going back the second day a lot easier. The social aspect of jiu-jitsu is a key part at the beginning.
Another thing I would suggest, and this is the advice that I give to people who are contemplating competing in jiu-jitsu and have never done it before, you could also apply this advice to your first couple of days. When I talk to people about what to expect when they compete, what I say to them is, your goal, your task when you compete in jiu-jitsu for the first time is to experience competing. And arguably, you could say the same thing with your jiu-jitsu class. Your goal is to experience your jiu-jitsu class, to be as observant as possible, to take away as much as you can in terms of what your senses tell you. Not only because that is a reasonable goal given all of the things that you're going to be taking in, but also then you'll have that much more information to work with the next time around. So be observant, be whatever the opposite of presumptuous is. Assume that you don't know very much, but also don't put a judgment on that. Be okay with the fact that you don't know very much. There's no way that you could be expected to know very much, and the way that you can learn more is by being observant.
I like that. Your goal in your first competition is to experience the competition. And that, to me, that says more than just the 30 seconds to 5 minutes or whatever you're on the mat. It's the travel, the bonding with your teammates, the watching your teammates compete, your actual competition, talking to your competitor, your opponents. And there's so much to experience that's your goal, is to just take it all in and learn from the entire experience. I love that.
And this is also how we learn how to filter what's important and what isn't. So maybe the first time you compete, you are overwhelmed by sights and sounds, and you aren't able yet to hear your coach coaching you. So that's useful information. You want to be able to hear your coach coaching you. You want to be able to pay attention to the referee. You want to be able to prepare yourself so that you don't have an adrenaline dump. So what are the things that you really do need to start paying attention to? What are the ways that you can keep yourself calm? Is it listening to music? Is it breaking a sweat? Is it talking to people? Is it not talking to people? But all of these things are things that you can observe as you try one set of actions, and you take from those what work, and then you modify, and that's how you develop a strategy for navigating a competition, and that's also how you can develop a strategy for navigating your academy experience.
Can you maybe tell me a story of an early competition where you ended up learning a lesson that you didn't anticipate?
Sure. I started competing regularly as a purple belt, so I was actually fairly late to competition relative to a lot of people's journeys. And I remember one competition where I looked around for my coaches, and they were there, and then I completely lost sight of them, completely lost track of them, didn't know where they were, went out and competed, and the only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat and my opponent's breathing. So I remembered after the fact that I should have been listening for coaching, but in the moment, it didn't even occur to me that anything was going on except what was going on right in front of my face and on top of my body and underneath my body. And so I didn't have competition skill at that point. I wasn't able to segment my attention so that I could focus on trying to compete against my opponent, but also listen for coaching that might help me do it better. And it was almost like I went, completely to survival mode, where just the absolutely only things that I was dealing with were the ones that were directly in my line of sight, in my line of touch.
I think that's a common experience. Could you do you think that there's a way to train for that and diminish it other than just go out and competing more and more?
Well, one way you can do it so that you don't have to do it in the competition scenario is to work with your coach. I know there are a lot of coaches who will set up competition style training, where not only are you starting from the feet, which a lot of academies, typically for the free training after a technique session, we'll start from the knees or we'll start from our back for space considerations, and also just to kind of get to the ground and work on the stuff that we've been drilling. But if you do a competition style class, you can start from the feet, and you can even have there be an audience, which for me was the biggest part, was trying to put out of my mind the fact that there were people staring at me and watching my jiu-jitsu, and to have the opportunity to hear people coaching me and coaching my opponent, and being refereed, all by people who I knew who were on my team. It was really helpful in getting me sort of desensitized to the fear of stepping out onto that mat that seems so huge in front of a crowd that seems like it's millions of people, and just feeling like you're completely alone. So that's one of the ways that I would suggest is to basically emulate the situation as much as possible in your competition preparation training.
Yeah, I think that would help with the nerves a lot, and coaches that kind of provide that environment, I think, do a great service to the competition side of their team. I'd like to get to know your jiu-jitsu a little bit better. Can you tell me a little bit about your style of grappling, or maybe some things that you like to do on the mat?
Sure. I come from, my background is Carlson Gracie and Carlson Gracie Jr., that lineage. And so I came from sort of a, more smashy type of movement. And I've tried to round that out a little bit, and to become a little bit more mobile, and a little bit more flowy. And I have most recently been playing with my hooks, to, keep a guard open, to keep myself connected to my partner, to try to set up finishes and sweeps and to advance my game. I think that covers it these days. I feel like over time, I was just saying to somebody that there was a series of movements. I was doing an omoplata, and my partner postured. So from the posture of the omoplata, I took the back, and I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, that's something I haven't done in probably years." And so things sort of come around again and again. And so now I'm all excited to play with that sequence because I hadn't played with it in a while. So from this idea of, starting out a little bit sort of heavy and then trying to get a little bit more mobile, but then tying in things that that have worked for me in the past and linking them with things that I'm working on that are relatively new to me, it can get interesting, and that's sort of why it's never boring. And when it is boring, it means that I've just sort of become stuck in a rut and need to shake things up, either by trying to learn something new or by trying to reach back into the recesses of my brain and remember something that I used to know.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how when you make a slight change to your game and how that'll affect the rest of your game, and then sometimes old memories get jogged loose of, oh yeah, I can do this from here. I haven't done that for a long time. It just seems like you said, if it seems boring or you feel like you're stuck, making a slight change could make a significant difference. It seems like, for me anyway.
Exactly, and it's it could be a grip, or it could be a head placement or something, and then all of a sudden you're seeing that everywhere and using that to modify kind of your bread and butter moves, and see how this particular grip or this particular placement of the head, as opposed to where you used to place your head or use the grip, might change what you've been doing, and if it makes it more effective. And that's where you can start to workshop, and you can talk to your training partners and say, hey, does this feel more annoying to you, or does this feel more annoying to you? And then you can get feedback and really kind of build on these tools and toys that you find and make them really work for you.
You just kind of mentioned about getting feedback from your partners, and can you maybe talk to me a little bit about the different roles and important natures of having a coach and then having training partners, and what they do for you as far as your own development goes, and what you should do for them?
Sure. Your training partners, I think this has been said before, but your training partners can really give you feedback in terms of whether or not you're actually getting a move. So if the choke isn't working, then your training partner isn't doing you a service by tapping to it. if it's not working, then the training partner can point that out to you. Depending on the skill level of the training partner, that may be the time for the coach to intervene and make sure that the positioning is where it needs to be and the movement is correct. So the coach is someone who can help solve a problem, while a training partner, depending on the level, is someone who could help diagnose a problem.
Wow, that's a good way to look at that, and it's fairly simple, and it's a good way to think. If you're someone's training partner, everybody's someone's training partner, but you're not doing them a service by just tapping when they almost have it. You need to give them that feedback to help them.
And training partners and coaches can serve both roles.
Yeah.
So, a higher level training partner is going to be able to help you solve a problem, and certainly your coach is going to be able to help you diagnose a problem. So yeah, it's funny because when we're training, or when we're just wanting to get the tap, if we don't get the tap when we're drilling and our partner is quote unquote helping us, that may be when we feel most annoyed with our partner. When it's actually that we should be annoyed, not even annoyed, but just aware of the fact that something we're doing isn't working. But that annoyance and that feedback from your partner, those can sometimes go hand in hand and help you realize that this is a teachable and a learnable moment. This isn't a time for frustration or for getting angry at the person who's actually trying to help you.
When are some common times where it could be frustrating with training, as far as maybe somebody's rolling too hard, or you're not getting what you want out of your open mat time? Could you maybe help us out with some frustrations on the mat?
Sure. I think there are these archetypes, right, that people joke about, where the guy who says let's just go light and then comes at you like a house of fire, the person who never taps to anything, and so what I have started to do in my career, and I understand that this may be easier for someone who has more experience and maybe a little bit more confidence in this area to do, but one of the things that I've started to do is if I encounter someone who has said let's go light, or if I feel like the roll is not going in a way that I want to, then I simply tap and I say, you know what, the energy between us, I'm not comfortable with it. I'm wondering if we can tone it down a little bit. And I always make it we. I don't say you're being a spaz. I don't say you're being annoying, because it always takes two. And that way not only does it make it easier for us to have a conversation, but then we're in it together. So we can work on this situation. I may have observed the situation, but I'd really love for us to work on this problem together. And so that's one of the things that I have done that has helped me just sort of change the energy around a role. I think so much of what we do when we train is communicated non-verbally. Our intentions are there for everybody to observe, but we may not, on the receiving end, know how to read them, and on the giving end, we may not know that that's what we're giving out. And so, self-awareness and awareness of our partners is another skill that I think, along with developing technique, is something that we need to learn.
Let's say that I've got maybe 3 months of jiu-jitsu experience, and every time we roll, you get the feeling that I'm really trying to tap you out. I'm really being it's like a little competition for me, and I don't know that that's not the best thing for me or for you. Like, I haven't realized that yet. Maybe it would be a way that you could explain to me that it's important, not just for safety reasons, but for development reasons, that I learn how to go a little slower and to be a little smarter with my training.
Sure. There's again, this is where I would take the opportunity. If I felt again like someone was coming at me like a house of fire, I would stop the person and try to talk to them, and I would say, what's your goal here? And ask the person point blank, what are you trying to accomplish here? And frequently the person doesn't know, and that's not a bad thing. It just it just can be sometimes indicative of where people are in their development. And I'm not saying I always know, but I do try to think about what the purpose is of different types of training. And so starting the conversation with that, sometimes it pulls people up short and they say, well, I'm trying to do jiu-jitsu. And that provides the opening for a conversation about, well, there are different ways and levels and modes of training. And so what I would like for you to think about right now is how can you keep it so that we're having fun and so that we're protecting each other and so that safety is our first consideration, good training is our second consideration, but fun is in there too. And I think that this is something that, again, like any technique, is a skill that needs to be developed over time. So this isn't something that I really don't think that people who are new and what we might refer to as spazzy or herky-jerky are doing it on purpose. I think that it takes people a while to learn the nuances of different kinds of training, to learn to control their bodies, to learn to control the competitive aspect a little bit, and also to learn to control any fear or anxiety they might have about being put in a compromising position. So I would just have that conversation as many times as was necessary and watch for progress. That's the thing to think about too, is that this isn't something that turns on or turns off. But if you can feel someone kind of relaxing their breathing in response to a suggestion that you make where before they weren't able to, then that's good progress. And that means that they're thinking about what you've talked with them about and they're trying to get their bodies to do it.
That's great advice, and I'm very interested in your perspective with your traveling and going to different gyms and this attitude. If I've never rolled with you before, and if we're going to roll, and you don't, obviously you don't know me, how are you going to approach that the initial session that you have on the mat with me?
If I'm rolling with somebody who is a lower belt rank than I am, then I will let that person set the pace. And then I will match my pace to that person's pace. And if it gets to the point where it's sort of a Tasmanian devil kind of situation, then I'll stop and say, I don't know if you know this, but I'm allowing you to set the pace. And so it's sort of going higher and higher, so maybe we can kind of relax a little bit. I guess the short answer, because if I were rolling with someone who was my rank or higher, then I would still come sort of methodically and in a way to try to feel out the person. I'm curious at this point in my development in people's game and how they engage with me and what kind of movement I'm going to feel from them. So I'm not immediately going to try to fling myself on top of the person and control their movement because I want to experience that movement. So I understand that maybe that puts me in a compromising position or a position I don't want to be in. But then I get some information about how that person moves, and I can add that to my arsenal of, when I engage with a person this way, this particular partner had an interesting way of countering it or of reacting that I hadn't experienced before. So I guess the short answer is I want to come in a spirit of exploration, collaboration, just sort of seeing what's going to happen next. And I know that in order for something to happen, there has to be at least a little bit of room for people to move. So I'm not going to try and come in super tight and curtail all movement.
Sounds like a good way to continue to learn, even with people you don't know very well. Sometimes if I'm rolling with somebody and they're just going at Tasmanian Devil 110 miles an hour, I'll kind of change it up for them. I'll adjust their pace for them. You know, I could, and I know you could do this as well. Slow them down. You know, put them in a spot where they can't, go crazy. But it sounds like you're getting better results and you're getting a better experience by actually just talking to them. Hey, you're going really fast. Why don't we take this down a little bit and work at a different pace? That does. What's the difference between the results you get with making them slow down versus talking to them and saying, "Hey, you want to dial it down a little bit, and we'll actually just do a little bit of 90% instead of your 110%?
Well, probably the best scenario would be to do both. So to slow somebody down and then to explain to them what you did. We're going a little bit hard. So why don't we take a minute here and just, take a couple deep breaths and relax, and now we can move on. So I've done that too, where I've asked the person to stop, just freeze in position, and then I've asked them to squeeze all the muscles in their body to see how tense they were, because chances are they didn't need to squeeze very hard to tense everything. And then I asked them to relax all of the muscles in their body, and then they see how they can feel how tense they were. And I say, try to keep in mind that maybe being tense all the time isn't the best idea. And then we go from there. And so sometimes that'll give us a couple seconds of a more kind of exchange of a roll, as opposed to, a steel cage death match. And the other thing that I always recommend to people, and they think I'm crazy until they try it, is to smile. Try to smile, and again, we're talking about rolling in the academy, right? Competition style training and rolling is different, and I understand that. But particularly for people who are new, who are just getting their footing, remember that you're there because it's fun, and put a smile on your face. And I'm telling you, it changes the energy, and it makes it more fun, and it doesn't necessarily make it less technical or less useful. But it might as well be enjoyable for everybody.
That's interesting, and I'm fortunate. I'm at a gym that people smile quite a bit, and we have fun, and we, you can hear us laughing while we roll sometimes, depending on who you're rolling with. But just smile. That could, on a subconscious level, take them kind of out of that kill mode, and this person's going to have fun when they roll. And I like how you mentioned, maybe not when you're, competing, but even that could be like, imagine you're all amped up and you look across the mat at your opponent, and they look like they're having a great time, and they're smiling and they're ready to enjoy the experience of their match. That could even maybe mess with them on a different scale, or that would be an interesting thing to try. Mm-hmm. You've written a ton of articles. What's kind of like, do you have a process for writing an article, or do you just get something in your head and you just write about it? Or tell me a little bit behind the scenes.
So I will frequently have a list of topics that are of interest to me. And sometimes the topics are ones that I come up with that are just things that I've wondered about or observed. And other times they are topics that people will bring to me. So people who've read some of my articles will say, have you ever written about X? You might consider writing about X. Well, my first response is always, why don't you write about X? It's your idea. And not to put the onus back on them, but because a good idea is a good idea. And I think a lot of people have a lot to say about jiu-jitsu who, if they have the opportunity to take advantage of a platform, they should. But what tends to happen is that mostly people will either say that they don't have the time, or that they want me to do it, or some permutation thereof. And so what I usually land on is, well, why don't we write it together? So when I co-write something with someone, then what ends up happening frequently is that I'll write a first draft, because that's where the comfort level is of the people who are suggesting the topic. I'll share it with the co-author. They'll have a stab at it, and then we'll go back and forth until we feel comfortable with it. When I'm writing about ideas that come to me, I do a lot of sort of initial constructing of narrative while I'm driving, or when I'm walking around, or when I'm doing grocery shopping and pushing my cart around. So I do a little bit of the initial construction of the argument or the angle in my head, and then the real telling part is when I sit down at the computer and write it out and see if it hangs together and makes sense. But I find that the most compelling articles that I've written and that I've gotten response to are the ones that I write in first person and the ones where I'm able to include an example or an anecdote or a story from my own experience. And I do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I personally love anecdotes, and I think that they're a great way to get a point across. But second of all, I remember I wrote a couple of articles in second person. It was you, and it made it sound like I was sitting in judgment on other people and that I had the right to sit in judgment on other people, as opposed to being in it with everybody. I'm making the same kinds of mistakes that I write about. I'm working on the same kinds of issues and being a better person and improving my jiu-jitsu that I think a lot of the people who tend to read my articles are working on. So it's disingenuous for me to try to put myself apart from the things that I'm writing about. First of all, because I do have experience with them, but second of all, because I need to be holding my own feet to the fire, and not asking of anybody else to consider things that I'm not willing to consider myself.
I think that's a big. I'm trying to occasionally write an article. My goal is to write one article a month for the BJJ Brick website, but I think that's a big lesson. Like, telling it from my perspective and maybe me, instead of just saying you and here's 10 ways that you're going to get better. Here's maybe 10 lessons I learned during my jiu-jitsu. And I think that we could learn this and take this from our aspect of coaching. You know, maybe somebody has, they need to make a couple of tweaks to their triangle choke or something like that. Well, when I was learning triangle, I struggled with this, and we had a guy who was, too big for me to triangle until I did this differently, and just maybe telling a story opposed to just giving the idea of like, do it this way. Really the way you explain something sometimes can make a huge difference on whether they pick it up and are able to run with it.
And the coaches and friends and colleagues I have who, in my mind, are the best teachers and the people that I admire the most are the ones who will use as examples their own quote-unquote failings or mistakes or shortcomings, as well as the successes that they've had. So they're doing a couple things. They're modeling that it's okay to talk about those kinds of things. They're acknowledging that they too have made missteps, and that makes it okay for other people to have missteps. And they're making themselves relatable and giving themselves increased credibility in my mind, because these are really accomplished people, but they are willing to kind of share the challenges that they've had, which I think is easy for someone who's at the start of their journey to lose sight of. Well, that person's a black belt. That person is, is a highly decorated competitor. It's easy for them, and it's not. It's not easy. It's a challenge all the time, and like I said, the people that I admire the most are the ones who are willing to name that and to make themselves vulnerable in that way by sharing it with other people.
Wow, we always hear, leave your ego at the door. It's almost like a safety message. Help you, if you're getting armbarred, leave your ego at the door. It's okay to tap. Don't feel the need to win every roll and to put it aside. But really, trying to diminish your ego a little bit and leaving it at the door while you're instructing and sharing your failures can take you from a good teacher to a great teacher, as far as being relatable to your students and sharing with them things that they're able to remember. And I think that's a great point you made.
Well, and also simply being truthful. That it's a truth that anybody who strives to excel at something is going to feel that they're experiencing challenges. They're going to make missteps along the way. They're going to make mistakes. That's also called life. And so, for instructors to be willing to share those aspects of their journey, whether it's a jiu-jitsu journey or some other kind, they're telling the truth.
Yeah, and I love your attitude and your ideas of teaching, and I think that's one thing that is making Groundswell so successful is the attitude of the instructions and just the community that's building there. Could you tell us a little bit about Groundswell?
Sure. Groundswell Grappling Concepts is the parent company of an organization that was started in 2009 called Women's Grappling Camp. And Women's Grappling Camp started with Felicia O., Emily Kwok, and myself, and it was the brainchild of Felicia's student Elena Hardy. And the idea there was to bring together women who train in a camp format so that they could train together. The rationale was that this was back in 2009. There were women who were training, but not nearly as many as men. And so wouldn't it be nice for there to be an opportunity for women to have their choice of female training partners as opposed to being the 125-pound woman who's paired with the 190-pound woman because they're both women. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's one training experience. So we thought that we would get maybe 10 people that first time, and we ended up having to cap the number at 30. And then we did a couple more and had to cap the number at 30 and realized that we had really struck a chord here with women who were looking for opportunities to train with each other. So we've done camps for women around the country and in Canada. In recent years, Felicia and Elena have stepped aside for their own reasons, and Hanette Stack has come into the picture. So we now have Emily, Hanette, and myself, who are the main instructors for what we now call Groundswell Grappling Concepts. We still do women's grappling camps. We actually just finished one at Princeton BJJ, which is Emily's main academy, and but we also are now doing more co-ed events. We're looking to do more leadership type things, and the way I think about it is Women's Jiu-Jitsu 1.0 was an opportunity for women to get together and train with each other and learn from each other. But we like to think, or I like to think, that we're moving into Women's Jiu-Jitsu 2.0, which is women who are now assuming positions of leadership, not only in women's classes or in women's events, but period. Both Emily and Hanette run academies with male business partners, but they are equal partners in their academies. They're equal instructors, and their students are men and women. And so we always want to continue to serve the women who made up the basis of our audience from the very early years. But what we're realizing is that the things that we try to do, and as you said, we try to build community. We try to help people learn how to be what I call good jiu-jitsu citizens. And that message resonates with a lot of men in the jiu-jitsu community as well. So we have had a couple of successful co-ed events, and we'll have more. And are partnering with people who have the same kinds of ideas that we do about what it does mean to be a good jiu-jitsu citizen. So it's exciting work, and we're really gratified that this is one of the ways that we get to pay forward all of the opportunities that we had, and as a thank you to all the people, men and women, who've helped us along our way.
That's great. What would be the easiest way for someone to learn more about Groundswell Grappling?
They can either go to our Facebook page, or they can go to our website, which is groundswellgrappling.com, or they can contact me on Facebook. So those are some of the best ways. We try to have a good internet presence, and each of us individually does events and things, and together we think we have something really special going on.
Absolutely, and I'll put links to all those in the show notes to make it easy for people to find.
Thank you.
Is it just women only, or is there an aspect of bringing men into some of these classes and camps?
We've done 2 co-ed camps, and actually one of the co-ed camps that we've done, and we have plans to do more co-ed events. And one of the co-ed camps that we did was this past summer in Cleveland, and we had as our featured instructor Nelson Puentes, who is one of the masterminds behind Inverted Gear. So he was one of the featured instructors, and we had, I think, about a pretty even 50-50 split, men and women, who came to that camp. So it was a really nice opportunity for Emily and Hannah and me to work with Nelson, for the campers to see men and women collaborating with each other as peers.
Well, this is awesome, and I really appreciate the idea of the 2.0. Women getting leadership roles. It seems like sometimes in jiu-jitsu, people are given a leadership role because of what they can do on the mat, and then oftentimes people are disappointed in what they do off the mat, or maybe what they actually like as a person. This is a great opportunity to get more leaders in jiu-jitsu, and many of them will be women, and what they bring to the table is going to be amazing for the sport long term.
Well, thank you. We like to think so. And, we love doing jiu-jitsu. We love contributing to positive jiu-jitsu communities, and we feel really fortunate that there are lots of people who feel the same way.
That's great. Do you have any sponsors you would like to mention?
I do. I would like to thank Inverted Gear and Q5 Supplements. I get to be sponsored by them, and I also get to be friends with the people who are behind the sponsorship. So I'm really fortunate.
What supplements are you taking?
I couldn't tell you the name of it, but it's right now the one that I'm taking mostly is for joint recovery. I'm not a spring chicken, and my joints are feeling it more and more, especially in cold weather. So I take a joint supplement that helps with inflammation and keeping things bending and straightening and doing all the things they're supposed to do.
Sounds good, and sounds like it is helping you stay on the mat, or get more mat time.
It is. I rely a little bit more on things like that, and I also rely on myself to be a little bit smarter than I used to be about training through injury, about taking rest when I need it, and really viewing rest as an important part of my training, and also just being realistic about the fact that I'm not, every day is the youngest I'll ever be. So I try to live that to the fullest, and I also respect that the time marches on.
Yeah, that's a reality for all of us, and I'm definitely dealing with that myself. So breakingmuscle.com is a great resource to find countless articles you've written. Groundswell Grappling is a good place to go for that. What's a good way to reach out and contact you?
You can contact me on Facebook. I probably spend too much time on Facebook, and that's probably the best way. And it's just Valerie Worthington. Okay, great. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. I appreciate you talking with us, and it's been a blast. I've learned a lot today. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
I'd like to thank Valerie Worthington for taking the time and coming on our show and educating our listeners about jiu-jitsu. And one thing I really liked, she was talking about it was kind of, back in the Tim Sled article or Tim Sled interview when we were talking about taboos, is she was talking about the person that's going, 110 miles an hour trying to smash her, trying to kill her. And, I like it. She's just, hey, let's stop. Let me talk to the person. And, it doesn't really blame them, but, let's talk. And if the person's still not getting it, hey, let's just quit today. Try again next time. I'm here to learn. I don't want to get hurt. I need to be out on the mat. So I thought that was a great advice. It's strange, Gary. Hearing that, it sounds like a reasonable thing, but I've never done that. That's what I should be doing. And it's not, I typically will either amp up what I'm doing or just control them and wait for the time to be up. But just say, hey, you're going really trying to kill me here, and I'm just trying to train with you. And there's different training modes for different times, but if you're trying to just get a good roll in, and you feel like the person is really trying to damage you, it's not ADCC when you're training. Yeah, and I think sometimes we don't even think about we just assume that person has already been told before, and so we're just going to amp up our, meet 110% with 110%, and try to just stifle that down just by beating the person down. And in all reality, we don't know if that person's been talked to. It's always, maybe they haven't, maybe they really don't know. So sometimes it's probably not a bad idea to talk to them. But the big thing is if that person's hurting you and it's not helping your training at all, and you've talked to the person, no reason to train with that person. If you're afraid you're going to get hurt, or the person's just not looking out for your well-being, there's no reason to do that. No reason to train with that person. Yeah,
I remember what Coach John Castillo would say to us, and if you're going real fast, and he says it's like driving a car. If you want to drive that car, 110 miles an hour, like we said, 110%, 110 miles an hour, you're not going to see anything. You slow down and look around a little bit. You could take it in, and you could learn about the place you're driving through. And that's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. Sure, 110 will get you there quick, and there you go, boom. But did you learn anything today? Not as much.
Yeah, yep. Slow down, and by slowing down, you'll see a lot of things that you're missing by going fast. So great advice by Valerie Worthington and John Castillo.
There we go. And definitely check out her online and keep up with the articles she's putting out. Years of high-quality jiu-jitsu articles from Valerie Worthington. So honored to have her on the show.
Yep. Like I said, we've used a lot of her articles before. She writes for breakingmuscle.com, so check it out.
Gary, we encourage our listeners to help us out by writing a review on iTunes.
Yeah, yep. We always like good reviews and funny reviews on iTunes, and a lot of times we'll even read them on the show.
Yep. So we took a look back at last year, and we tried to pick out our favorite review. And basically, what we do is, if you write us a funny review, hopefully we've earned 5 stars, but we'll send you out a little gi patch, just for like a little thank you. We are running low on the gi patches, but we'll probably get that figured out and that hurdle overcome, because this is kind of fun to send out a gi patch and make a connection with somebody. But we kind of glanced through and read, the ones we got last year. I don't know, maybe 20 or so, and we picked out a couple of our favorite ones. We emailed back and forth, and we picked a winner, Gary.
Drum roll, if I could make that noise, but we have a winner.
This review comes from our friend Nathan Hadley. 5-star review came in on April 22nd, 2015. Gary in my pocket. I saw that. I remember when I saw that, I was like, this is going to be awesome.
That one.
But we did get a lot of good reviews. I want to read this for you guys. It's so much what we want in our funny reviews that we will gladly patch or throw a patch in the mail and send it to you. So Nathan goes on and he says, I've been a huge, in all capital, huge fan of Gary for years now. Thanks to the BJJ Break podcast, I finally have the ability to have Gary's calm but assertive voice in my ear to soothe my restless mind. Nothing gets my juices flowing quite like hearing Gary ask the important questions that everyone is thinking about but don't have the platform at which to ask. BJJ Brick is my go-to source for important BJJ news. They're consistently mixing up things with their interviews and various masters of the art, and truly delve into the minds of the guests to explore not only their philosophies on jiu-jitsu, but in life. Keep up the great work, guys. And this is a great, thank you, Nathan, for that. And congratulations for winning the 2015 Review of the Year.
Review of the Year to Nathan Hadley. We appreciate it. And even though you poked fun at me, I thought it was great. I laughed really hard when I read that.
Yes.
So you are the very first Reviewer of the Year for the BJJ Break podcast, and we're going to start doing this every year.
Yeah.
So definitely, everybody put your reviews in and become the Reviewer of the Year.
And our apologies for 2014. We had many great reviews, but we just didn't think of this to do this. And I'm looking at this review and
Byron, who came up with this great idea?
It was you, Gary.
Okay.
You should have came up with it a whole year ago, and it could have been this our second annual.
My fault.
Turned a good thing into a bad.
Yeah.
But looking at this review, it's so funny, and it's just like it tells somebody who's reading, do I want to listen to this or not? Like, this is a fun place to go, and yeah, there's good information, but you get to have Gary in your pocket, and how great is that?
Yeah, there's nothing better than having me in somebody's pocket.
I'm trying to think of a prize we can give Nathan here for writing this review, and I've got it. I've got the perfect prize.
What would that be?
Recognition for writing such a great review at the end of episode 123.
That is it.
So
that is, yeah.
Great job, Nathan.
Yep. Thank you, Nathan.
And look forward to next year with a similar prize. And Nathan does have a patch, so he's good to go in that category. But
and Nathan, you're going to have to come with a strong one again this year, so you can try to, claim your title for another year.
Yeah, he had to defend his title. I think he probably even have to open up a new iTunes account to do that. But hard work is that's part of life, Gary.
Well, the crazy thing is now that Nathan just won that, he won. Our quote of the week by John F. Kennedy kind of is going to ring true to him. Probably he's going to have a whole bunch of people coming up to him and congratulating him. And everybody's going to remember him.
Everybody is going to be all over that guy, and it's going to be like similar to the review he wrote about you. That's going to happen to him. People are going to want more of that.
Have it. I mean, I guarantee you, probably in a day or two, Jay Leno is going to be calling the Tonight Show. He's going to have all sorts of people wanting to talk to him.
Is that still around? Did he retire?
I don't know. I go to bed before that. But, I know there's a Tonight Show. I don't know who hosts it. But.
So the Tonight Show will be calling Nathan and wanting to get his expert review writing skills and talk about them, I suppose, Gary.
Yep.
Gary, the music is changing, and it's telling us that this is time of the show where everyone is excited to hear about your audiobook this week. Seems like you always...
What book would that be?
You're always working on something and you just kind of don't know it at the moment. Your audiobook this time is called Double Monkey Punch, Fighting Twins.
This is... it happens to a lot of people. I mean, how many people do I talk to in a given week that get in fights with twins? It happens all the time. You can't just fight one twin. I mean, one of the people, the other one's going to come after you. I mean, they were born the same time. They shared a womb together. There's a deep bond. So no matter what, if you're getting in a fight with a twin, you're getting tag teamed. You got to take them both on. But that's where the double monkey punch comes in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, take you through stances, how to set this thing up. But, the best way, the bad thing about the double monkey punch is it's not like you're hitting two people at once. Basically, the philosophy is I'm going to hit this one twin twice. The bad part is the other guy is being unhit while I'm hitting the first person. So, I mean, you've got to use your speed and dexterity. You got to take that first twin down quick. And by the time you take that person down, you just got to pivot, find the next one, and finish it off with another double monkey punch. So, and if that don't work, run. So you have your choice. Either double monkey punch twice or run.
Yeah, and when you're around those twins that look like they're going to attack you, keep your shoes on. I mean, you need to have running shoes.
Yeah, it's always good to make sure you have good tread on your shoes.
Gary, what are the odds that
the faster you can run?
That if you double monkey punch like really good, maybe you catch them by the fridge or something and hit them while they're getting a glass of milk, that the other twin will feel it a little bit?
I bet I've met some people who could probably do that, mainly Bruce Redenbaugh. He could probably double monkey punch me and double monkey punch my non-existent twin and make me feel it. So I think I'd probably say, you said, what are the odds? I'd say about 1 in 1,000. So I think it could happen.
That's the type of guy Bruce is, about 1 in 1,000.
Yeah, yep.
If even that.
Like
but that's good to know. So I can't expect the other twin to react in pain as I'm inflicting this double punch on somebody, right?
Yeah, well, another really bad part about it is normally after you double monkey punch the first twin, that second twin is going to be really upset. So at that time, you better be ready because that guy, he's going to be, he's going to be madder than a squirrel that just got shot with a BB gun.
Those are mad. And another problem is, Gary, like we all seen the MMA fights where the guy will land, Gary and I are fighting, and Gary will land a really solid leg kick on me, and it's like, I leg kicked right back at him, but mine was just because, it was frustrating because he landed a good one on me. You know what I mean? So I can assume that the twin is coming at me with a double monkey punch, boom, right behind me with that.
That's
so, dang, Gary, I'm not really helping to sell this book.
No, but one thing, I mean, if you get to Chapter 4 talks about what you do in that spot. You know, you throw the first double monkey punch to the first twin, but Chapter 3 told you, after you've worked on your double monkey punch, to go to ninja class. You learn ninjutsu. So in Chapter 3, after you throw that first double monkey punch, you drop the smoke. So that way, the second twin cannot see you until you've snuck up behind him and double monkey punched him.
Nice.
So you have to work in smoke bombs.
Yep. I always keep a smoke bomb in a pocket. And one time I went off an accident. Boom. No twins around. I don't know why, but I didn't see any twins after that.
Well, yeah, I could see that happening. They couldn't see you anyhow. The smoke bomb went off.
That's true. Yeah, we're excited about this book. You have a price set for this thing?
Yeah, the price is actually, I'm going to give it away.
Oh, man. You're just you're for the community.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of twin-on-twin crime, and we need to stop that.
Could you imagine if both twins threw that double punch?
Oh, I mean, that'd be a quadruple punch.
Carry the 2. Yeah, it adds up, Gary.
Yep. 2 times 2 is 4.
Absolutely. 2 plus 2. Not times, right?
Well,
I can't
plus and times.
Man, this is getting too tough. This isn't the BJJ Math Podcast.
Math Podcast. Yeah, last week we had the book podcast.
We have all kinds of things going on over here. Well, we're excited next week. We have
what do we got next week, Byron?
We have Jen Hall on the show.
Awesome.
Formerly known as Jen Flannery, she married Ryan Hall, and she's a black belt, the main instructor at 50/50 BJJ, and we get to learn about Jen Hall, and she's got, everybody likes Ryan's teaching ideas and philosophies and the way he explains things, and Jen is different than him as far as that goes, but very thought out in the way she explains things, and I think it's also very similar as far as what you're going to get out of next week's interview.
Yep, so definitely tune in next week, and don't miss Jen Hall.
Yep, and we got lots more after that. Check this out, Gary. After Jen Hall, we have a show with Roy Dean that week. The week after that, we still got another show coming your way. Sean Williams.
Oh, Roy Dean, Sean Williams, Jen Hall.
So it's good. We got your weeks planned out for you, my friends. We just haven't. The interviews have already happened. They're already on the computer, ready to be edited, and we just got to record the shows. So every Monday, my friends.
Yep, I've heard a lot of people say they take Mondays off just so they can anxiously wait our show. So we don't advocate taking Monday off of work, but if you do, these are 3 good weeks not to miss.
Well, I advocate listening while you're at work.
Oh yeah, yep.
So and I met a guy, got a little mat time in with a listener, John. He's from Missouri, I believe, and he says he listens to us while he flies on his plane. So he does a lot of traveling, and we're happy to be in his ear. So John, thanks for rolling with me, buddy, and it was a good time.
Yep, thanks for listening, John. We appreciate it.
So everybody, we'll catch you guys next week. As always, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.